Hi everyone, welcome to the next video wherein we'll continue discussing about the introduction to the Constitution of India. But I have already told you that we would be doing it in a general manner for the constitutions, but the Constitution of India would be taken as examples at certain point of time. Please do check all the earlier videos of all the different subjects which are being uploaded on a very timely manner regularly, and please do like, comment, share and subscribe. So this is part 2 in the series. Part 1 has already been shown to you. Now the next question that we would try to answer, because the first question that we tried to answer was that what is the need for a country to have constitution, or in other words, what are the functions performed by the constitution. So the next point that we need to try to answer is that what makes a constitution effective. ठीक है, अब constitution बन तो गया था, we have understood the functions also, but then what are those things which will make the constitution effective is very important to be understood. So the first thing which makes a constitution effective and not just keep it as merely as a document is the mode of promulgation, which means that how was a constitution made, or how the constitution came into being, who crafted the constitution, and those who crafted the constitution, how much authority did they have. All of these questions, so basically the method or the mode or the means by which it was done. Now for that to understand, we have to see the point that there have been many countries wherein the constitutions have been crafted by the, let's say, the military leaders or some leaders who were unpopular among the people, and these people were having no ability to carry the people, which means the citizens, with them. So in those kind of countries, even though the constitutions were made, but because these people were making the constitution, or let's say responsible for crafting the constitution became defunct, which means it did not function, defunctional, it did not function. However, there are certain countries wherein the constitution has been very successful. For example, India, USA, South Africa. Now in these countries there is one common thing which has probably made the constitution successful, is that they were created in the aftermath of the popular national movements. At least we know that for the case of India, a national movement that led to the creation of a body constituent assembly which further drafted the provisions of the constitution. Similar kind of history has also happened for USA and South Africa. In your world history, if you study about them, you will get to know about the national movements there. So this is what we understand. For example, because I have integrated the information about Constitution of India here, so see this example. So the Constitution of India was formally created by a Constituent Assembly, about which we will talk in this detail later when we talk on the topic of making of the Constitution, and that was done between December 1946 to November 1949. But even though it was done by the Constituent Assembly during this period, there has been the long history of the national movement which has impacted the making of the constitutions. How it has happened? Because the Constitution of India specifically drew the legitimacy from the fact that the constitutional makers enjoyed immense public credibility. Now understand this. Those people who were the members of the Constituent Assembly, who were responsible for making the constitution, they were the people who were very much celebrated by the public, or who had the trust of the public, and who had got those public credibility. So these people, these constitution makers, they had the capacity to negotiate, and also they were getting that respect of the society in return. So it was kind of made by, the Constitution of India was made by those people. For example, here we have seen military or the unpopular leaders who could not carry people with them. But in the case of India during the national movement, because it is the leaders of the national movement only who are the participant of the, or the members of the Constituent Assembly, who helped in framing the constitution. So they were taking the people along, right? So we can say that the Constitution of India has already got that broad national consensus, because it was about, or it was framed by those people who were anyways the kind of representative of the normal public or the other public, because they enjoyed that public credibility. Now some of the countries use a process about which we will talk in the topic of democracy, which is known as referendum. So this is a kind of direct democracy. Now in this, what happens is that people are asked to vote on any particular matter. So some countries use this process of referendum wherein people are asked to vote that do you desire for a constitution or not. But in the Indian constitution as such, people were not asked about it. No referendum took place. But still the people adopted it, and adopted it not only for, formally, but adopted it as their own. Why? Because they were abiding by the provisions of the constitution. And why would they abide? Because they had that trust, that faith in the constitutional makers, that these leaders will not let us down. These leaders will take care of our freedom, our respect, our dignity, justice, etc. And the authority of the people who enact the constitution helps determine in part its prospect for the success. Why? Because the people who are helping in getting it done or helping in enacting the constitution done, वो भी एक role play करते हैं. Even if it in parts, they also play that role and they make that constitution successful. So this was the first point to understand what makes a constitution effective, that is mode of promulgation. The next point which can help us to understand about the effectiveness of a constitution is the substantial provisions of a constitution, the provisions which are having certain substance in it, and that is the hallmark, or you can say a signal or symbol of a successful constitution, because the substantive provisions of a constitution will give everyone in the society some reason to go along with them. For example, if there are certain provisions on the constitution which talks about preserving freedom of members or which talks about maintaining equality of members, of course these provisions are going to be accepted by everybody, and any person in the society would like to accept those provisions. वो तो सबको चाहिए होगा. But let's say, for example, if there is a constitutional provision which is allowing that whoever is a permanent majority, be in terms of religion, language, whatsoever reason, ठीक है, any kind of majority can oppress the minority group. वो उन पर अपना दबदबा चला सकते हैं, ठीक है, उनको परेशान किया जा सकता है. Now, if a constitution allows that oppression of the minority, so why will the minorities want to go along with the provision of the constitution? They will not want. The minorities will get no reason to go along with the constitutional provision. Why would they be interested? Now, if any group feels that their identity is being shifted, for example, in this case, the minority group, if they feel that they are not being considered, if they feel that they are being isolated, they are not given that importance, and their identity is not taken into account, they will have no reason to abide by the constitution. They will just ignore the provisions of the constitution. So therefore, we need to remember that the provisions of the constitution which takes every member along is very important. And no constitution by itself achieves perfect justice. अपने से थोड़ी हो जाएगा. It has to convince people that please trust the provision, and it is these provisions which is providing the framework to pursue basic justice. हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं उन provisions के थ्रू कि हम आपको justice देंगे. अपने आप constitution से किसी को नहीं बोल सकते कि आपको justice मिलेगा. You have to try and make the people understand and trust on those provisions. Okay, now the next point, which again is a condition for understanding the effectiveness of a constitution, is the balanced institutional design. Now understand, whatever institutions will be there in a country, it has to be done in a very balanced manner. Why? Because intelligent design is very much important here, so that no single group or no single institution can subvert the constitution. वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को अपने अंडर ना कर ले, वो बहुत ध्यान रखना होता है. सो वी नीड टू इंश्योर दैट नो सिंगल इंस्टीट्यूशन acquires the monopoly of power, that particular institution only will have the power. No, it cannot be done. It should not be done. And the fragmenting power has to be done across different institutions. The different institutions will have different authority, and everybody will have some or the other kind of responsibility and the power associated to them. Now, let's say, for example, if we talk about the Indian Constitution. So here we see the horizontal fragmentation of power across different institutions. जैसे legislature, executive, judiciary. So we see that horizontal fragmentation, which means legislature is having its own role, executive own and judiciary own. और तीनों के पास अपना अपना काम है. And even we have, let's say, independent institutions like Election Commission. So they do their work on their own. ठीक है, तो हमारा बहुत balanced structure काम करता है. So Indian Constitution में, when we have the separation of power, which is not actually very strict, it is kind of integrated only, but the success of the Constitution is also facilitated by an intelligent system of checks and balances. And when I will do all these organs with you in detail, I'll make you understand that how can one organ be responsible to the another organ, and therefore that checks and balances, that no one institution or no one organ or pillar would be able to subvert the constitution. वो अपने अंडर में उसको नहीं कर सकते हैं. They will have their own sets of power, but at the same time they will not cross their limits. And if they do so, there will be another institution to take care of those checks and balances, कि वो check maintain करें और उसके वजह से वो balance को maintain करें. Okay? So striking the right balance between certain values, norms, procedures, these are very important, ठीक है, as authoritative. We have to maintain that balance between them because they are giving you that authority. And also we need to allow enough flexibility in the operations, right? It cannot be so rigid. We have to adapt to the changing needs and circumstances also. So we need to be slightly flexible also, but we need to be slightly rigid also, because ऐसा भी नहीं है कि हम बस कैसे भी change कर लेंगे. थोड़ा सा strict method होना चाहिए. So neither too rigid nor too flexible is the best way out, and the Indian Constitution is like that only. So any successful constitution will preserve the core values also and adapt them to new circumstances also in a very, very balanced way. And also Indian Constitution is called as a living document. Your 11th NCERT has a whole together chapter on this, Constitution as a living document, because it shows that it is organically evolving. ठीक है, क्यों evolve कर रहा है? Because it is able to adapt itself to the changing needs and circumstances. If it was made in, let's say, 1949-50, it is not that it will always be applicable with those strict provisions or stringent provisions. If needed, we will change it also as per the demand of the society. So we need, or we are already striking a balance between the possibility to change the provisions and the limits that we can have on those changes also. Okay. Now let's quickly see this section. How was the Indian Constitution made? Although I repeat that I will have another lecture specifically on making of the Constitution, taking parts from your LAXMIKANTH, क्योंकि वहाँ पे काफ़ी डिटेल में दिया गया है, to know about the details. ठीक है, अभी के लिए हम brief structure ले रहे हैं. The reason of doing this brief structure is because when we see the briefing of Indian Constitution making, only then we will understand that how these three things, the three methods that we have talked about to see if a constitution is effective or not, works in the favor of Indian Constitution. ठीक है, तो as I told, I have integrated the general information about Constitution with the Constitution of India. So therefore we need certain basic introduction about this particular topic. This is to be done in greater detail in the later phase. Okay, so formally, as we have seen, the Indian Constitution was made by a Constituent Assembly which was elected for undivided India, because ये 1946 में ही बैठ गई थी, तो उस टाइम पर India was undivided. So ये तब से चल रही है. First sitting happened on 9th of December 1946. And then this assembly sat for continuous period. बीच बीच में वो लोग meetings करते थे, and they reassembled as a constituent assembly for divided India on 14th of August 1947, क्योंकि 15 अगस्त की हमारी आज़ादी थी. ठीक है. Now the members of this constituent assembly were chosen by indirect election. Indirect election means the people of the country did not directly choose the members. So they were chosen by the members of provincial legislative assembly. जैसे आज के समय में विधानसभा होती है ना states में, तो उस टाइम पर provinces होते थे. The states were not there, these were the British provinces. तो उनकी जो legislative assembly होती थी, उनके members ने constituent assembly के members को चुना. And this provincial legislative assembly was established under Government of India Act 1935. Now these are actually the pointers that you need to study from your modern Indian history perspective. So if somebody has not done, you might face some problem in it, but don't worry, when I will finish the modern Indian history already in the story format, this will come to you. So for the time being, you can just remember these points, ठीक है, because it is historically linked and needs to be done. So आपको थोड़ी सी परेशानी हो सकती है, but if somebody has already covered the subject, आपको परेशानी बिल्कुल नहीं आएगी. The Constituent Assembly was constituted roughly along the lines proposed by the Cabinet Mission Plan. ठीक है, ये सब चीज़ें आपको याद रखनी है because they can come handy to you from the prelims perspective. तो कैबिनेट मिशन प्लान क्या था, उसके प्रोविजंस क्या थे, व्हाट दिस स्पोक अबाउट द नंबर ऑफ मेंबर्स एट्सेट्रा, हम देखेंगे जब हम इसके डिटेल को करेंगे. So the constitution was adopted on 26th of November 1949, but it was enforced on 26th of January 1950. The reason being, तो इसका क्या मतलब होता है कि अडॉप्ट यानी कि एवरी मेंबर हैड साइन, लाइक यू नो द मेंबर्स वर आस्क्ड टू साइन कि आप इसको एक्सेप्ट कर लो ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंट असेंबली, बट दे इन्फोर्स्ड इट, मतलब लागू होगा जिस दिन से इसको हम एक्टिव मानेंगे, दैट वाज मेड टू होल्ड फॉर 2 months. द रीज़न बिकॉज 26 जनवरी हैड played an important role in the history जब हमारा पूर्ण स्वराज का बात हुआ था. You need to study or find this out and write in the comment section which year this happened, for which year this had the significance. ठीक है, इससे करीबन 20 साल पहले की चीज़ें आपको थोड़ी सी फाइंड आउट करनी है. जस्ट फाइंड दिस आउट, यू विल हैव द क्यूरियोसिटी ऑल्सो एंड आंसर दैट इन द कॉमेंट सेक्शन. Now because this day 26th of January had hold significance in the past and they were celebrating the Independence Day on that day, they kept this day as reserved to enforce the constitution, and therefore we celebrate this day as the Republic Day every year. Now the members were not adopted through universal adult franchise, which means that every adult, like you know we vote in the present situation, every adult can vote. तो ऐसा system नहीं था उस time पे, लेकिन the body which chose this, ठीक है, the Constituent Assembly, that was a very representative body, even if not perfectly, very broadly, because every kind of grouping was representing that body. Now let us understand those 3 parameters, those 3 questions, ठीक है, which we have to see: the mode of promulgation, then substantive provisions, and the balanced institutional design. That is the Indian Constitution justifying all of these 3 pointers or not? ठीक है, so the first point will be on the mode of promulgation. So let us which means how was it made, how was the process done? So the Constituent Assembly followed the principle of deliberation. तो ये दिखाता है कि कितना effective constitution हो सकता है. Now what is the process of deliberation? As in talking, discussing, debates, etc. So each member deliberated, they thought, they had those provoked thought upon the constitution with interest of the whole nation in mind. It is not that the member was only considering any benefit for herself or himself, or only for their own, you know, let's say caste or religion or subsection, whatever. No, they were considering the interest of the whole nation in mind. And despite they were having disagreements, yes, of course, it's not that they were agreeing on every single thing. No, they did have disagreements, but that was done very legitimately. So they had those differences of principles, but legitimate differences, जिस पर आप सवाल नहीं उठा सकते. And each and every provision of the constitution was passed with discussion, deliberation, debate, and you know, further voting. But there was one provision of the constitution that was passed without virtually any debate. You know, उसको बस सबने मिलके पास कर दिया, और वो क्या था? Introduction of universal suffrage, which means universal adult franchise, that everybody who would, you know, be an adult would be allowed to vote. Universal suffrage means there will be voting rights given to everybody without any discrimination. उसके पहले क्या होता था? Different criterias were there for voting rights, ठीक है, before independence. वो सब हम modern में बात करेंगे. So that was accepted by everybody, and every other matter was seriously discussed and debated. So mode of promulgation आपको बताता है कि yes, deliberation use हुआ. Members also engaged in public reason, which means कि वो क्वेश्चन करते थे, वो समझते थे कि पब्लिक के लिए व्हाट इज़ इम्पॉर्टेंट, एंड यू नो दे प्लेस्ड अ ग्रेट एम्फेसिस ऑन द डिस्कशन एंड रीजनड आर्ग्यूमेंट. सो नो random argument or no nonsense discussion, a reasoned argument. And the members gave principled reasons to other members for their positions, that whatever position you are having, we are giving you those reasons, we are giving you those respect also. Now when we talk about the procedures of the Constituent Assembly, how did it happen? So they made actually several committees, they formed committees, ठीक है. So 8 major committees were formed on different subjects to deal with different matters, and there was an attempt by them to reach the consensus on the provision, that we would like to reach the consensus, जो majority कहेगी हम उसी हिसाब से provision को लेंगे, accept करेंगे. And then the provisions, you know, अगर सब accept कर लेते थे तो good enough, otherwise it was subjected to vote. In totality, the Constituent Assembly met for 106 days in a span of 2 years, 11 months and 18 days. So roughly you can say 3 years. ठीक है? And the sessions were open to the press and public alike. एक जैसा सबके लिए open था. नाउ द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि जो भी ये प्रिंसिपल्स यूज करते थे, ठीक है, दैट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन शुड एंश्राइन हैड अ बैकग्राउंड कंसेंसस. So it already had that backing, that's consensus, and the principles were forged during the long struggle for freedom that we have just talked about, the Indian national movement. So the backings have already, those values, those provisions have already come from the time of national movement only. But Constituent Assembly ने तो बस उसको एक जगह सब कुछ इकट्ठा करा. And the best summary of the principles that the nationalist movement brought to the Constituent Assembly is the objective resolution. Now understand this. So the nationalist movement, which has focused on several values that, you know, when we will get independence, these are the things that there should be in the constitution. They brought in the front of the Constituent Assembly a resolution, or you can say kind of an official proposal, which was called as objective resolution, which means we are proposing something which we consider as the objectives of the constitution, that okay, this is, you know, जैसे aim and objective बोलते हैं ना कि ये हमारा target है, ऐसा होना चाहिए, right? तो that defines, that objective resolution, that official document defined the aims of the Constituent Assembly, that this is how the Constituent Assembly wants to work, and this was moved by Jawaharlal Nehru in 1946. The present preamble of the Constitution of India, which you read, right? We the people of India having solemnly, आप जो आगे का पूरा पढ़ते हो एंड तक, एंड में यू हैव वन डेट 26 नवंबर 1949. तो उस प्रियम्बल का जो रॉ फॉर्म था ना, दैट वाज ऑब्जेक्टिव रेजोल्यूशन, विच मीन्स इट फर्दर मॉडिफाइड इनटू द प्रेजेंट डे प्रियम्बल. दिस कैन बी अ पोटेंशियल क्वेश्चन ऑफ योर prelim, so remember this point. Now what exactly were the pointers given in the objective resolution? We will do, when I said we will do the making of the constitution. अभी तो हम effectiveness के सवाल को जवाब ढूंढ रहे हैं, ठीक है, अभी हम इन सब चीज़ों को बस summary में ले रहे हैं. Also, this resolution encapsulated the aspirations and values behind the constitution. For example, you know, all the keywords which are given in the preamble, ठीक है, कि इंडिया इज़ अ सेक्युलर सोवरेन सोशलिस्ट डेमोक्रेटिक रिपब्लिक की बात होती है, आपका फ्रीडम, ठीक है, देयर वर सर्टेन वर्ड्स विच आर इंसर्टेड लेटर बाय 42nd अमेंडमेंट एक्ट, दैट इज़ अ डिफरेंट थिंग, बट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स हैव ऑलरेडी बीन डिस्कस्ड इन द ऑब्जेक्टिव रेजोल्यूशन, ठीक है, टॉकिंग अबाउट इक्वालिटी, फ्रीडम, जस्टिस एट्सेट्रा. तो उस पर हम बात करेंगे जब हम उसका डिटेल देखेंगे. And based on this resolution, our constitution gave institutional expression to the fundamental commitments. You know, as I just said, these words like equality, liberty, democracy, etc. So therefore, we need to remember that apart from the rules and procedures, so it's not that, you know, our constitution is only full of rules and procedures. No, apart from them, it is also a moral commitment to establish a government that will fulfill many promises which the nationalist movement had held before the public. Why? Because we are having that legacy coming from the nationalist movement to that Constituent Assembly which framed the constitution. So we need to ensure that the kind of government that we will have will take care of the values which were promised to the people during the nationalist movement. Okay. Next is about that, you know, balancing, that the last point, effectiveness on the institutional design and balanced design. So the Constituent Assembly also spent a lot of time on evolving the right balance among these institutions like legislature, executive and judiciary, which further led to, so you know, their debates and discussions and deliberations led to the final discussion that we will adopt the parliamentary and the federal arrangement in the case of India. What are these kind of system? हम इस पे आगे बात करेंगे, ठीक है, अभी नहीं घबराना है. We will have separate sessions on them. Also, the distribution of governmental power between legislature, executive happened on one hand in the parliamentary system and between center and the state government in the federal system. The constitutional makers also borrowed a number of provisions from the other countries. They, you know, did not hesitate. Whatever good things they found in the constitutions of the other countries, they borrowed. So we will have a section on the sources of the constitution also, कि कहाँ से क्या 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 borrow करा और हमने सीखा, ठीक है. But it was very important for them and they understood it. So even if they borrowed the provisions from other countries, they defended each of the provision in the justice for India, or you know, in the part for India. So they justified or they defended those provisions on the grounds that it was suited to the Indian problems and aspirations. So you know, it is not random कि बस हमने pick कर लिया और copy paste कर दिया. No, we have, if we have borrowed something, we have modified also. For example, the parliamentary system was borrowed from Britain. So you know, they said that even if you are borrowing it, we will have certain modifications as per the needs and requirements of India. So when we will do this system, we will also have one section which will differentiate the parliamentary system of Britain and parliamentary system in India. What are the basic differences between them? Okay. So therefore, to conclude, India was extremely lucky to have an assembly which, instead of being parochial in its outlook कि एक बस फिक्स तरीका चुन के orthodox type से काम कर रहे हैं, no. What they did was, they could take the best available everywhere in the world and make it their own. They just took everything, all the important provisions, borrowed from the world, and they tried to make it their own, yani adjusting or modifying it in the case of India. So with this, I have ended the discussion on giving you brief about the constitutions in general and slightly relating it with the provisions of the Indian Constitution. In the further classes, we'll discuss more on this because we are taking each and every topic, subtopic very cautiously. आराम से हम detail में समझ रहे हैं, so हम सबको easily handle कर लेंगे, ठीक है? So see you guys in the next video. Till then, thank you so much. Like, comment, share and subscribe, please. Bye bye.